Am I the a-hole because I don't want my half-brothers to come on a trip with my uncle and I? 15M and 3 older half-brothers, twins, Max and Jake, 18M, and Shane, 16M. We have the same mother but they have a different father. Max, Jake and Shane's father is very involved in their life, and they live with him every other week. On the other hand, I have a deadbeat absent father that I never see. I have no relationship with half-brother's father. My half-brother definitely do not treat me the same way they treat each other. I have friends who have older brothers who are supportive and hang out with them and are there for them, and mine are nothing like that. Often when Max, Jake and Shane are at their dad's, I spend the weekend with my uncle, mom's brother. Because of that, my uncle and I are very close. One of the things we do together is watch NASCAR, since he's made me a fan. It's our thing. As far as I know, my half-brothers don't watch NASCAR. I've never watched a race with them at least. Next week Max, Jake and Shane were supposed to be at their dad's. My uncle was going to take me to the NASCAR race in Atlanta that weekend, just him and I. However, my brother's dad has had to go away on some business trip, I guess, meaning they aren't going to their dad's next week. Since they'll be here, my uncle also invited them to come to the Atlanta race with us. I don't want them to come. When they went to Europe or Florida or skiing or New York or any of the other trips they take with their dad, I don't get invited. They go away with him 2 or 3 times a year. I've never been away because my mom can't afford it. This will actually be my first time on a plane. They get everything. This is one thing I had, just my uncle and I, and he just invited them. Since they're going, I no longer want to go, and am considering telling my uncle that tomorrow. When he told me they were coming, he could see I wasn't happy. He knows how I feel about my relationship with them. But he said since they're home he can't not invite them, it wouldn't be fair. But it's not my fault their dad is going away. I know my uncle can't uninvite them now, so I really think I just prefer to stay home and not go. Whipped if I told my uncle I don't want to go and instead stayed home? Relevant comments, and Op's response to them. Commenter 1. I don't think that you would be the asshole, but I think that you would be unwise. You seem to feel sad that you are left out. And that makes sense. But one of the reasons that they are closer to each other than they are to you, is that you guys don't have as much time together. I'm not saying that you will come away from this trip best friends, but you might be closer than you would have been. It sounds like you are angry about being excluded, and your solution to that is to exclude yourself further. That never works. It's a classic instinct and a lot of people do it. But those people end up lonely and angry. Unfortunately, in order to have fulfilling relationships, you have to make yourself vulnerable. And that involves risking rejection. You have to put yourself at risk of rejection all the time, otherwise you're just gonna be alone. Have you ever talked to them about the fact that you feel left out? If not, you might want to try that. You don't have to ask them to pay more attention to you, but you could simply say, sometimes it's hard for me, because you guys are really close, and I don't have that. Sometimes I wish that my brothers felt more like regular brothers. Be important. You don't say it like you are mad at them, you say it out loud like you want them to know because you care, and you wish that you could be closer. And then, the key is you don't ask for anything. You just tell them how you feel. And you don't sulk. You laugh at their jokes, you are kind to them, you treat them like you would treat a friend. That's how you make friends. You have to treat them like friends. You can't sulk your way into a friendship, and you can't isolate yourself into brotherhood. If you have already tried these things, and it hasn't worked, then by all means stay home. Then, if you tell them honestly how you feel, and you are kind to them, and you put in some effort, and it doesn't work, at that point, you could completely separate yourself from them and not have to feel guilty or responsible for it at all. At that point, they are the problem and not you. But until you try those things, you will be part of the problem. You have to understand that they are also dumb teenagers, and they might not understand how you feel or have the maturity to care about how you feel. And that sucks. But you won't know until you give them a real chance. If you give them a chance to know how you feel and an opportunity to try to fix it and they blow it, then it's on them to seek forgiveness when they eventually gain the wisdom to realize they were wrong. So basically, I don't think that you would be an asshole, but I think you would be one step closer to being a lonely guy who created that situation for himself. Help yourself by being the most kind, honest, open person you can be. Even if it doesn't pay off this time, practicing those skills will eventually pay off a lot. And if you do go, you can still just try to have fun watching NASCAR with your uncle, who you love very much. He's in a tough position and is trying to create something that's good for everybody. He's having to compromise right now. And he's doing it in a really nice way, by paying for a bunch of people to go on a cool trip. It might be worth trying to support him. Also, I know this sucks, but it doesn't really matter that they get more stuff than you. That's just how life works. Some people get more stuff than other people do. It sucks, but they aren't old enough to know better yet. And it's not their fault that they have more than you. It's not your fault either. Sometimes things are just unfair and all you can do is try to be as kind to everyone as you can. I appreciate the advice. I guess I've never directly spoken to them about how I feel, but I figure that they know. I mean, they are pretty obvious about not inviting me places. One-on-one they can be okay, but if it's two of them or all of them, they just go off by themselves. I asked to do stuff with them, they say no, so I stopped asking. I know our mom has talked to them before and our uncle has, but it didn't really change anything. Maybe they'd include me for a couple days and then it's back to doing their own thing. So I guess I haven't really been fully open with them, but I think they know. I am thinking about trying it, like you said. If his half-siblings ever bullied him before, TBF I wouldn't call them bullies. They don't pick on me or beat me up when no one's looking. They just usually don't include me. Commenter 2, you are only 1 year younger versus the youngest half-sibling, do they resent you, did your mom cheat? It's not your fault, but their dad isn't related to you, but your uncle is related to all his nephews. I guess my mother cheated TBH. They got divorced a couple months after I was born. However, I don't know if my mom and their dad were still in a relationship when she got pregnant, maybe they had already separated or maybe he had already moved on, ick. I have never asked and don't think I want to know. Timing would suggest she did cheat, but I can't confirm. Commenter 3, even kids can do the math and realize that their parents were together if mom and dad divorced a few months after was born. If didn't care about trips his siblings hoe on with their dad and realized they are irrelevant to him, then he never would have used them as an example. It does bother him, or he wouldn't use them as a reason to excluded the older 3. Because that logic doesn't work. The older kid's dad isn't his dad. But the uncle is all of their uncle. Can pitch his tantrum and not go. He can miss out. The uncle has decided that he won't leave out the other 3 just because has some possessive thought about the uncle. At the end of the day, whether likes it or not, the uncle isn't his father. His father left. His mother is the reason behind most of this. I mean, yes, I'm jealous of the trips they go on with their dad, that's very true. However, I don't expect to be included in those trips. I mentioned it to point out a trip isn't a big deal to them. They've been across the country and to Europe, while I've never been on a plane. It's not like my uncle is taking me on a once-in-lifetime vacation that they haven't experienced. I understand that our uncle isn't just my uncle, however, so I've accepted they'll be there, I guess. Commenter 4, yeah, this is really too bad. I'm sorry, The trip you thought you were having is no longer the trip that's being offered. I also wish your uncle had talked to you first, but he is trying to do the right thing here. All that said, I think you should go on the trip. Don't deprive yourself the fun. This is a passion you and your uncle share. Don't have your brothers come home talking about having seen NASCAR live, which is your thing, not theirs. Maybe it will be a bonding experience for you all, maybe it won't. Maybe your uncle will take you somewhere again, just the two of you, maybe he won't. You should confide in your mother more. I know she's doing her best and she can't make your bio dad step up, but she should know how much the fact that your brothers all have 2 families hurts you and excludes you. I'm really sorry for that. But all that said, please accept this trip and the experience your uncle designed for you. You need to adjust your mindset that it's a group thing, but make the most of being there. I heard NASCAR is crazy cool in person. Definitely don't want to damage my relationship with my uncle. I also don't want to make my relationship with my half-brothers worse than it is either. Update, after reading the comments, I realized it wasn't my place to ask my uncle not to invite my brothers, as he is also their uncle. Also, if I chose not to go, it would just be denying myself something I really wanted to do, and would upset my uncle, which I didn't want, so I decided to go to the NASCAR race. I also decided against saying anything further at that time. The days before we left, it felt like my brothers were being nicer than usual, so that was cool. They added me to their group chat so that it would be easier to keep in contact on the trip, the reason they gave. I roomed with one of my older brothers, Max, in the hotel. On Saturday we went to the racetrack for the first races. I was getting food when I accidentally cut the line. I thought the people standing in front had already ordered. Someone pointed it out to me and I went to the right spot in line. There was a guy in line who was super mad, going on about how I was a little asshole and only apologized because I got caught, and he walked up to me yelling. And then Max appeared and told the guy to calm down and to stop yelling at me. He kept yelling at me and Max stood between me and the guy and told him, "If you say another thing to my little brother, we're going to have a problem," and the guy finally backed off. I've never seen Max as mad as he was right then over that guy yelling at, and it meant a lot the way he jumped in. Back in our hotel room that night, I was thanking Max again for standing up for me earlier, and he told me as his brother he'd always do that for me. It seemed like the right moment, so I finally took the advice and opened up to him. I told him that I wished me, him, Jake and Shane hung out more together, and I'd like doing more stuff with him and them. We talked for a long time about our relationship. Max then talked to Shane and Jake, because the next day they both apologized for me having felt left out as well. When we flew back home, Max had told Jake more of what I had said. He asked me if he could first. Jake and I went out on Tuesday and talked about it a bunch, and he kept apologizing for letting me down. I told it was probably mutual and I didn't act like I wanted to spend time with them, but he told me he was my big brother and should have been better. We've all agreed to do better going forward. Kind of funny that it was a drunk guy yelling at me which got me to open up in the end. More relevant comments, and Ops response to them. Commenter 1, thank you for taking the time to update. I've been wondering how everything went. I'm really glad you enjoyed the racing and, also, that your brothers will try to include you more. Cheers, mate. Op, the races were so cool to see in person. My driver almost won on Sunday too. Commenter 2, I've noticed that a great way for family to mend an issue is coming together because of an outsider. I think it takes of them to bring out the sense of a us. Op, I've never had a stranger shout at me in public like that before. I'm glad he walked away after Max said that, because I'm pretty sure Max was serious about there being a problem if he shouted at me again. Commenter 3, congratulations, Op. That's amazing. My only advice is to keep actively working on the relationships. There are no roadmaps for half-siblings. Coming from a toxic situation where I have two half-brothers from different mothers, it was hard. Especially because my mom worked so hard to make sure my life was so stable, while my brothers had a much more tumultuous time. I had no idea how much resentment my brothers had built up over the years because I got to go home to somewhere safe. We weren't rich. We had no big vacations. I just wasn't abused at my mom's place like my brothers were abused at their mother's place. We were all abused at my bio father's place. We are working on our relationships now. But it's a hard road. So I'm glad you are starting now. And that your brothers are so supportive of you. Yeah, it will take work. 1 week can't fix everything, but it's good to start.